When he's not baking the most amazing medibles in the whole world, he's working as a communication working in the communication offices at the Medical Cannabis Patients Alliance of Canada. So yeah, he's going to talk a little bit more about that.
Do you know how long it's been since I've been in front of a class? This is freaking awesome. I mean, seriously, I used to teach for a private trade school. Now I go and I do talks and lectures and things like that. And they're just talks and lectures. It's not the same.
You can stay there though, I'll sit here.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stay here because I have this bad habit of bouncing around a lot. So I'm going to try and stay here, lean here, and we'll do a little audience participation. Because this is now a classroom. So I don't want to get anybody in trouble, so just go ahead with a show of hands. Who in here has used marijuana before? That's awesome. How many people did you just rape?
Nobody.
They all enjoyed this and they go, enjoyed it. Back in 1937, back then, one of the ways they got the most widely used medicine illegal was to basically tell doctors and to get doctors to support this new dangerous drug called marijuana. It would cause black men to rape white women when they used it. I've been using cannabis since I was 12 years old, and I've never raped anybody. And some people told me it was marijuana, but I didn't rape anybody. All right. Marijuana was a fictitious name given to the plant that the doctors were prescribing. When they made it illegal, the doctors all of a sudden found out that marijuana was cannabis. So they had to start going into other drugs. And the most prevalent drug at the time for pain was opium, because it also worked very well. But narcotics don't work the same as cannabis. So I'll give you an idea of what happened to me. At 12 years old, I started smoking cannabis. I used that recreationally for a very long time. Eventually, I quit using it. And because at that point, I've been hoping and hoping that, the laws would be relaxed, that acceptance would happen, but too many years went by. It was getting very expensive. Plus, I had a family that was a risk, so I quit. Packed up, moved BC for 10 years, never touched a bit. Right? So I left Nova Scotia where we had all kinds available, went to BC where there was even more openly available, and I never used it. I come back, and everything was fine and good. And on New Year's Day of 2008, I went to the hospital for the emergency, which what I thought was a stroke. And that's when it started. So we'll do this kind of quick, because it's kind of a cool timeline, because I'm an asshole. Seriously, I am. And if somebody pisses me off, they usually find out. And it happened the hard way for too many people. New Year's Day, I go to the hospital with what I thought was a stroke. Very quickly, they determined that it wasn't a stroke, but it was something else. So they gave me 5 little pills and sent me home. Said you can only take 1 pill a day and come back and see me in 5 days. Went home, took these stupid little pills, but of course, before I put one in my mouth, I have a computer, I looked it up. Started checking out what's this drug and what's it used for, because the doctor at the time didn't give me any indication of what it might be. And the drug he gave me was prednisone. So I took prednisone for 5 days, knowing that if you take it for 7 days, then you have to get weaned off of it because you're actually addicted to it. And you can't just stop it. But if you go 5 days, you can stop it. So I took the 5 prednisone, went back to the doctor. 5 days later, he asked me how I felt. Told him exactly how I felt, and he said, well, it's pretty simple. You've either got ALS or the worst case of MS I've ever seen. He said, and my aunt has died from MS. I said, well, people don't die from MS. He said, people die every day from MS. He said, they just don't tell you that because they know they can't cure it. He said, but I can't diagnose you with MS. We've got to send you for testing. And that's where the nightmare began. A month after that happened, I was in Rick Simpson's kitchen talking to him. Because for that 4 weeks, I was doing nothing but extensive research on both ALS and MS, all the manifestations of MS, as well as anything else that could be in there, such as Lyme disease or anything like that. Everything that I found kept showing MS, but there was glaring differences. I met Rick Simpson in February that year, tried his oil that he made, didn't like the taste. But I did like the fact that I could move for the first time in a month. I could walk around for the first time in a month. And I wasn't in pain for the first time in a month. Unfortunately, we went shopping for 5 hours, bought a whole bunch of stuff to redo the living room. The next day, the pill wore off, and I was back to sick trying to redo a living room. Also, I wasn't working, so I had no money. So I'm trying to scrape up as much as I can to buy cannabis to smoke, just for the relief of the pain and some of the symptoms, until I could start catching on. It took a year and a half to get a diagnosis. And the problem with the diagnosis is it's got to come from the MS clinic if it's MS. The problem with the MS clinic is they're not very bright. All right, the first MS specialist they sent me to told me that it was impossible for me to have MS because MS does not cause pain and I'm not a female. That was the justification that I got. The second MS specialist that I sent to, his words were, this is the worst case of MS I've ever seen. I don't think you're going to make it long. So he scheduled me for an appointment. And at that time, when I went to see him, this is all kind of conglomerated into a big, giant nightmare. I got a spinal tap done to prove it was MS. So I had definitive proof because my MRI images aren't the same thing. I have a different form of MS. It's known as acute MS or Marburg syndrome or Marburg variant. And it's basically a malignant MS. Most cases die before they're diagnosed. It's usually diagnosed posthumously. July of 2009, after I was diagnosed, as it was actually MS, I ended up in the hospital with what I thought was an appendicitis attack. Actually, I thought my appendicitis was ruptured. They rushed me in right away, did some blood work, did some x-rays, and they said, no, it's not your appendix, but we see something else, so we called in a surgeon. So the surgeon came in. I spent a week in the hospital that week while they ran wide ranges of tests, and they came back and said, we're going to have to open you up because you either have the worst case of colitis we've ever seen, or you have multiple tumors all through your small intestine. At that point, I was still eating, but I was forcing myself to eat through the pain and drink. Surgery went through, they opened me up, they pulled out all of my organs, and the only thing that they really caught them by surprise when they're first checking my organs is, one, there was no cancer, there was no colitis. There was some cysts on my liver that were actually clearing up and going away. And I was eating cannabis concentrate constantly at that point. The other thing they noticed while they had me open is my small intestine spasmed while I was completely under. And they watched my small intestine spasm and stay closed. And that's when they realized that what was happening to me is what happens to many people with MS. A lot of people with MS will actually have their throats constrict. And it's the nerves that control the muscles around the throat will actually close the throat and they suffocate, or they'll choke on food. Mine was doing it to the organs. Before I went into the surgery, I said to the surgeon, is it possible that this is the MS doing this? No, not likely. When I come out of the surgery, I said, so what's causing it? I'm pretty sure it must be all that cannabis you're using. I said, no, seriously, bro, brain, what do you think? He said, well, we know that MS will constrict throats, constrict blood vessels, veins. It's doing it to your small intestines. There's nothing we can do for you. Would you like some narcotics? No. And all I've heard at this point was, there's nothing we can do for you. Would you like some narcotics? My license came from Health Canada for 10 grams a day is where I started. The day after my license came, my designated grower brought me my first batch and I started making oil on my own. Like the cost was virtually nothing other than the solvents to make my own medicine. I started ingesting it right away. At that same time, I had that appointment with that neurologist. He wants to meet me in January and start me on very high doses of interferon, which is kind of a form of very poisonous chemotherapy, and it doesn't work for MS. So my question was, why would you prescribe me a medication for a variant of the disease that's never even been studied, let alone had a medication that actually worked? And his response to me was, false hope is better than no hope. And my response is, false hope is lying to yourself, and you'd have to be pretty stupid to lie to yourself. I said, I'll meet you in January at your appointment, and I'll see what I can do in between that. At that time, I was taking 27 pills a day. They were antidepressants, muscle relaxants, anticonvulsants, Advil to help alleviate the symptoms from all of that crap that I was taking. Talked to my doctor and said, all right, what's the best way to get off of this crap? He said, slowly. Muscle relaxants, anticonvulsants, urinary tract pills, all of these medications, no problem getting off of them. Antidepressants, a little different story. An antidepressant is prescribed to people with MS because it supposedly helps for pain. Well, actually, an antidepressant causes more pain because it doesn't hide, it doesn't get rid of the pain. It actually puts you into a numb state that you can actually start thinking about how much pain you're in, and causes suicidal tendencies and things like that. I was taking 150 milligrams of Effexor at that point.
Wow, that's the nastiest.
You got it. And I was pounding them in. I was also taking 3,600 milligrams of gabapentin. I was taking, I have a whole list of them that I was taking. So I started weaning myself off. By January, I was taking no pharmaceuticals. I was out of a wheelchair. I was walking with a cane. And I could converse, hold conversations quite intelligently. Went in and met the expert of MS, and he had a year's supply of needles and syringes and really high doses of interferon sitting on the table. And the last time he saw me, I was in a wheelchair, and I walked in. He said, well, this is for you. And I said, no, it isn't.
Good for you.
And I'm kicking my ass because I should have taken it and brought it home and videotaped me blowing it up.
Yeah.
Because I never got to do that on video. I've got pictures of all my medications, but I would have really liked to have taken a year's worth of $70,000 of medication and blown it up my backyard.
Yeah. Good for you.
Because in Nova Scotia, MS patients don't have to pay for their MS drugs. You as the taxpayers pay that $15,000, $16,000, $70,000 a year for the MS drugs, and the MS drugs don't work. I was using cannabis, doing better, and I was already supposed to be dead. Right? At most, they gave me 6 months from onset. That was January 1st, 2008. 2010. No, 2010. Summer 2010, my stomach pretty much closed up. And I was still swallowing capsules of oil, straight oil. And at one point I was up to 5 grams a day. And it dawned on me then, because because even when I started using the oil, I knew it worked, but my problem is I wanted to know why it worked. I wasn't going to take Rick's word that this would cure MS, because in a roundabout way, he figured it could. I knew it wouldn't, but I figured it could come up with relief. So I looked at the science instead of just in the back. And it dawned on me while I'm laying in bed in a ball of pain, not eating for a few weeks, that, holy crap, if I'm not eating, I don't have any fat going in my system. If I don't have any fat, I don't have anything for the cannabinoids to actually attach to. So I started swallowing capsules of olive oil. Holy crap, was I high. I was just baked. I mean, seriously, because I'd gone without food. I was trying to live off of inshore, and that, I'll rather die than drink that. Seriously. Even a drink of water, a sip of water, was just excruciating pain. New research had come out about angioplasty for MS, called CCSVI, chronic cerebral venous insufficiency. They blow out your veins, your jugular vein. 1 year to the day that that information released about that, I was in New York, kind of sneakily, and at that time, very likely I wasn't going to make it to Christmas of 2010. So on November 20th, actually, today's my anniversary.
3 years.
So
2 years since he had
in October, September, October is when I really started to piss people off. And that's when I started going after the health ministers. Mainly my own. She's my pet pig. I'll call her whatever I want.
Good for you.
And you have.
And I have, and I've been quite vocal to her, to me, and everybody else, but I have to sign a piece of paper that she says it's unethical for me to live. So as long as I have that piece of paper, she'll be my pet pig forever. I don't care what position she's in. Yeah, oh my God.
Yeah.
So, for a number of years, I've written a number of different articles, and I've badmouthed quite a few people, but luckily a lot of them were under some of my other aliases. So I didn't rain down too much on the nightmare that I was going to proceed. The procedure wasn't allowed to be done in Canada, it had to be done in the States. So we had to raise up money. So we had a bunch of people fundraising, $12,000. An emergency appointment was set up in Albany, New York. Flew out on a Friday afternoon, or Friday morning, had the procedure Saturday morning, had the testing of everything else on Monday morning, back in the plane, flew back to Canada, and then said I went. And the reason being is I actually had to have somebody meet me in New York with enough medicine in the same style that I made it for me to be able to survive the 3 days that I had to be there. $12,000 for a procedure that was 40 minutes long. While I was down there paying $12,000 for this procedure, my aunt was in Halifax getting the identical procedure for free because she's a heart patient. And because she's a heart patient, they can do that. Because I had MS, angioplasty is not safe. All right, even though it's thousands are done. So this is the neurologist blocking patients from getting healthy. I walked out of the clinic, literally, carrying my cane like this. I walked out of the clinic and I hobbled in. All right, 40-minute procedure, and all they did is it wasn't a pleasant procedure because if you're consuming, 5 grams of oil a day, anything that they give you for a medicine isn't really going to have much effect. And 10 milligrams of Valium do nothing to someone with 5 grams of oil. But I purposely didn't take any oil because I wanted to know if this procedure was actually going to work or not. So I had the Valium, and then I had the pain of them expanding these things, these veins. Walked out, and everything was great. January of 2011, I get a letter from the MS clinic saying that I have an appointment to go in. Now, when I was in there and I told him that I would go for a year with just using cannabis and not use the interferon, he looked right at me, he said, I won't bother making an appointment for next year, you won't be here. I said, we'll see. So I went out, started using cannabis. I get a letter from the clinic saying that you have an appointment with the doctor. So I said, sure, I'm going to see him now. And it was, I live in Amherst, so it's a 2-hour drive to Halifax, 10-minute wait in the waiting room, and I think it was within 5 minutes of being in the waiting room, I was actually standing in the hall telling him where to go. And because I made a promise that nobody would get hit, nobody got hit. Unfortunately, I never should have made the promise, and I should have hit him. But he basically looked at me point blank and told me he didn't know basic medicine, and he'd never heard of the term of stenosis or restenosis. I said, all right, obviously you're too incompetent to be my doctor. So after a couple choice profanities, and a threatening motion, not seriously threatening, but I just moved quick. A letter got sent back to my doctor saying that there's no reason for me to go back to the MS clinic as they're not completely convinced that I actually have MS. Right? So to get out of seeing me, they're going to claim that I don't have MS, which is all fine and good because they really don't want me back in there for their safety and my freedom. Right? The effects of that procedure lasted, I'm going to say at most 9 months. At about the 12-month mark, a year later, I was completely restenosed and back to where I was. All right? But I was still eating oil, and lots of it. So in the last 4 years alone, I have consumed 1,500 grams of pure oil, which is the equivalent of 15,000 grams of bud. All right? That's just ingestion. I've probably smoked that much as well. And I maintain this. I ingest cannabis to stay alive. I smoke cannabis so others can stay alive. Because seriously, I have very low tolerance for stupidity. Cannabis keeps me pretty mild and calm.
Yeah.
People.
Especially at that MS clinic.
So, even though I was progressing, I was still in pain, I still had fatigue, and I was still going downhill, but I wasn't going downhill as fast. Like Jess, I'm a guinea pig, and I figure I can't teach somebody about this unless I know. So I learned, where Jess found out 5 days, I found out I can only go 3 days. And after 3 days, I have full pain back and I'm curled into a ball. But I've done this on purpose to adjust dosages. High is a side effect. Seriously, that's all it is. Anything that you put into your system is going to cause an imbalance. That's a side effect. Sugar, caffeine, tobacco, cannabis. If you use the same dose every day at the same time, and you space them out, so for example, half a gram, which would be the equivalent of 5 grams of bud, ingested every 4 hours forever, you'll find out that high is actually impossible.
Right.
Because your body basically metabolizes to the difference, gets used to it. You no longer feel high. I don't feel stoned. Right now, I've actually today, what time is it? 10:30. All right, I've consumed, I'm guessing somewhere the equivalent of smoking about 250 joints. All right.
Your joints are shitty.
No, because that math calculation was based on half-gram joints, right? So it's the same as 250 half-gram joints.
Some of us have.
Like I said.
Well, I got this thing. To me, it just seems like a big waste of smoking a cigar, right? But I can get the same effect off of half the amount, and I can have 3 more later. I'm a disabled person. I have a crappy pension. I got no money. I got to make this stuff last.
Sometimes how big it is perspective, too.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Now, and so I was still progressing, but I was realizing that a lot of damage that I had at onset was actually being repaired. All right. One of the things that had happened to me right at the beginning is all of the hair. I'm not going to show you because it's embarrassing. All of the hair, straight line down here on this side, and all the hair, straight line down here on this side, was gone overnight. Went for nerve conduction testing as part of trying to figure out, and it was the technician. And I said, look, don't laugh at my legs, I didn't shave them. And she looked at my legs, she said, holy crap. She said, that's bad. I said, what do you mean? She said, that is nerve damage. And she said, that hair is never growing back. The nerves are totally damaged. The hair is gone. Well, surprise, surprise, I got hair growing on my legs. Right?
Yeah.
So she was wrong. From my times in the military, I had nerve damage in my arm where I couldn't even touch my arm for about 20 years. Nothing to it. But surprisingly, this is also where the pain originated when I first went to the hospital, from the damaged nerves. Because MS attacks the nervous system, and it obviously found, let's go to the nerves that had the most damage already, and we'll start there. So they started there. So while I was still progressing, realizing that the effects of the CCSVI had worn off, and I didn't have another $12,000, and I wasn't going to chance another clandestine trip in the middle of the night to the U.S., I had to come up with all the alternatives, or die. But at that point, I was already supposed to be dead, so it didn't really matter to me one way or the other. July of 2011, a study came out, and it was just a very small, obscure little medical study. And they were studying rats. And they took rats, and they gave them cannabis. 2 groups. This group of rats got this much cannabis. This group of rats got the same amount of cannabis. This group of rats were fed a diet of omega-6 fats, the same as what you normally have in your body because we live in North America. These rats were fed omega-3. The study concluded that, holy crap, omega-6 is a really good choice to be mixing with your cannabis. The rats that were taking omega-6 and cannabis became fat, lazy little slugs that just laid around and ate. The fat rats that were taking omega-3 and cannabis were running around constantly. They're always on the exercise wheel, and they were lean, mean fighting machines. So then I started thinking, there's got to be a correlation. So I started doing some more research, and then I found more studies. And these studies are out there, all right? They're all over the place, and with the internet, you can find them. You just got to know how to search to find these things. But you go and you start finding out that there's actually a study done on the difference between omega-6 and omega-3 at the cellular level when the cannabinoids are attached. When the cannabinoids are attached to an omega-6 fat, or the lipid from the omega-6 fats, when it gets to the receptor, only about half of the receptors, the CB1 and the CB2 receptors, respond. And a lot of these remaining receptors don't do anything. The excess THC, because that's the one that they test for, gets stored in your fat cells with the rest of the omega-6 fats. When the cannabinoids were attached to the omega-3 fats, all of the receptors responded. Utilized basically all of the medicine. The body doesn't really store omega-3 fats. It uses omega-3 because our diet is so heavy in omega-6. So I thought, well, this might be something worth looking into. If I can get double the receptors working at the receptor level, then obviously I can get more relief. That was in July that I read the study and started researching. So it took me from July until March to actually implement it. And I had to talk to, because I'm such an inquisitive guy, I want to know everything. I talked to 3 different doctors and 2 different pharmacists. Because I have MS, I also have very low vitamin D. And I found the same thing about vitamin D. Vitamin D, when it's attached to an omega-6, only half of the receptors open. You only utilize half the medicine. The remainder gets stored in your fat cells. If you're really heavy, which I used to be, I was at 285 pounds. But then my stomach closed and I was dropping weight at about 10 pounds a month. So after 100 pounds, I got down to pretty cool. And I dropped a few more and I feel comfortable, but I had to buy new clothes. The omega-3 oils work, it's almost like a, okay, I'm not going to go with that word yet. Omega-3 and cannabis work the same for vitamin D. Vitamin D, if it's attached to omega-3 lipid, works twice as good, or if not more, than before. So I thought, all right, fine. I'm testing everything at once, and I'm just going to do it, because I make my own capsules. And I was making my capsules with extra virgin olive oil and cannabis. And I said, all right, fine. I'm going to do an omega-3 oil instead of olive oil, and I'm going to add liquid vitamin D and attach that as well to the omega-3 lipids. So off in my search to find what I thought would be the most sensible omega-3 oil. And the most sensible omega-3 oil that I could think of for cannabis is actually the most sensible omega-3 oil, and it's hemp seed oil. And hemp seed oil, when it's attached to cannabis extract, creates almost like a synergistic relationship. Hemp seed oil is legal in Canada, so in the grocery store, you can go to the superstore and buy it off the shelf. It's legal because it has less than 0.03% THC. That's what they have to report. What they don't have to report is the fact that it is a 3-to-1 ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 in the oil. The omega-6 in the oil isn't your normal omega-6. It's actually called GLA or gamma linoleic acid. Right? So it's actually, of all of the omega-6s, it's probably the safest one you could ever eat. But more importantly, hemp seed oil also contains CBD and CBN. And because they are not the psychoactive components of the cannabis plant, they're not reported. But they're very beneficial for the autoimmune system, pain, inflammation. GLA as well is very strong on inflammation. Spain has just added hemp seed oil to its list of safe protocols for cancer treatment. So if you want to use something to treat cancer in Spain, and you don't want to use chemo, third on the list is hemp seed oil. It's right under baking soda. Right? Baking soda, yes. You had that quiz before. Baking soda has been used for a number of years holistically. Basically, as an alkali to kill a fungus is for the ones that assume that cancer is a fungus. So I decided, all right, let's do this. I went out and I got my blood test done for just vitamin D to get a baseline reading because I'd stopped taking the stupid little D3 pills for 30 days. My count come back at 27 for vitamin D. Your normal low or extreme low is 75. We have MS patients that are taking 70,000 units of vitamin D a day in hopes to try and increase their vitamin D. So the first day, my dosages were a half gram of oil every 4 hours with half a milliliter and half a gram, same thing. Half a milliliter of oil with 1 milliliter of olive oil every 4 hours. And I would get 4 to 5 hours relief out of one dose. And I did that 4 times a day for 3.5 years. So the first dose, I said, all right, fine, I'll just maintain my normal dose of half a gram, and I'll mix this as a 3-to-1 ratio with the hemp seed oil. and I'll throw in 1,000 units of vitamin D, and let's see what I get. I got so freaking high. Holy crap, I was phased for 2 days. I was wrecked. I mean, seriously, I was seeing things I was out of my mind. And this is somebody that bragged about how much he could eat by eating 5 grams a day. By attaching it to the hemp seed oil, all of a sudden I found out that, holy crap, I'm going to have to start all over again. So, in April, my dosage was 2 grams of oil, or the equivalent of 20 grams of bud, ingested in 4 doses. We're now at 9 months later, and I'm at half a gram of oil total in a day. I take 2 pills instead of 1 every 4 hours, because each pill lasts me 8 to 9 hours of relief. As you can see, I'm not actually holding on to the cane when I'm walking around. The cane is more for balance, or if my legs do get tired, because I still have fatigue, but not near as much. I used to have a nap every 2 hours. I was spending, on average, 16 to 18 hours a day were being spent in bed. The rest of the time was basically trying to hobble my way to the bathroom, or haul my way to the computer to either write or do more research, and then back into bed and curl up. And I did that for too long. So everything kind of happened around March. 60 days after that initial dose, and then I figured out, okay, I gotta cut this back, but I maintained 1,000 milligrams of vitamin D. I maintained a 3-to-1 ratio of hemp seed oil and extract. 60 days after that, I went back for my blood test, and my vitamin D count was at 68 after 60 days. The highest I could get it at, taking, well, in some cases I was taking upwards of 7,000 units a day. The highest I could ever get it at was 36. So I figured, all right, I must be on something. I don't have to bug my doctor anymore. I'm not getting any more blood tests. August, probably August of this year, is when I realized that I'm not progressing anymore. Or I see no sign of progression, where 4 years ago I could look at my watch and see the progression of the disability. Since August, I've actually been doing the opposite, so that's why I'm actually a bit more, a little more vocal about what's going on, because I now use 1/10 of the amount of cannabis that I used to use, and I'm getting more efficiency out of the medicine. And this can go a long way for people like me that don't have no friggin' money, all right? The Jess and Lori McCaffrey, well, Lori actually approached me and asked me if I'd become an executive of the MCPAC. And my attitude was no. This was last January. And my attitude for no was simply, and I've been saying to maintaining this for a long time, I'm not going to commit myself to anything because I'm not supposed to be alive. And at that time, I can honestly say, living and dying was maybe a 50-50 split, and I really had no idea which way it was going to go. So there's no sense in me committing to anything. I wouldn't even commit to somebody's birthday party, because good chance I was going to be in bed, or I was going to be dead, but not walking around and jogging. So I said, no, I won't do that, but I will help you out more from the outside. And I became communications officer for the MCPAC, which means I had to clean up my public appearance. All right? So basically, I don't like to go out and call her my pet pig and things like that, but still, she's going to be my pet pig. I have very, like I said, low tolerance for stupidity, so I had to clean up a lot of what I say about our elected officials. to a point. I mean, if you look at my Facebook page is Marcel Gignac. MCPAC is a little different. Don't think that me as Marcel Gignac speaks for the MCPAC. When I speak for the MCPAC, everybody's wonderful. They're all my friends, and I'm just here to educate them all. So the idea of the MCPAC grew out of Facebook. And Facebook had a group called the MMARP
MMAR, Patient Lobby Group. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, as you all know, Canada, since the year 2000, after versus Parker, we come out with a medical marijuana access regulations. So this was the medical marijuana access regulations patients lobby group. And it was basically a spot for patients that had their MMAR card could talk on Facebook. And really, it was more of a social experiment. I don't want to say that. It's very beneficial because it's still there and it'll stay there because it's extremely helpful. But what it did is it allowed people like Jess, Lori, myself to observe what the patients were saying and what the patients needed. And from that, we took that information and basically formed the MCPAC. Health Canada, after losing in court, had to allow patients to be able to grow their own medicine. Now, they want to take that right away from the patient and have the patients purchase from these legal licensed entities. Problem is, the legal licensed entities are very likely going to keep the prices in line with either Health Canada at $5 a gram or at black market street value of $10 a gram. That's not going to happen to me unless you as taxpayers are paying for it. Because the choices are easy. You're going to allow me to grow my own, or you're going to give me a card and I'll pay the $27 a month of what my cost would be to produce my own, and you can pay the $85 or the $8,900 difference. Or while I'm in jail, you can deliver me my 2 pounds per month. But regardless, I'm not paying for it. I'm growing my own, or you guys can pay for it. That's up to you. Like I say, I ingest it to stay alive. I smoke it so you guys can stay alive. Right? It's a very simple thing. So what we've really realized was nobody's speaking up for the patients. I've been to the Health Canada meetings. I shut the Health Canada people up very quickly. And it was very easy to do. I went into the meeting and I said, you say ingestion is the best form of using this cannabis. And the director of Controlled Tobacco and Substances says, yes it is. I said, great, show me how to eat it. And I threw a bag on the table. I said, I'm not a cow. I don't have multiple stomachs. I cannot process that much fiber. You show me how I'm supposed to eat it without breaking the law. Because the criminal code says you can't make extracts, and you can't extract the medicinal components off the plant. Health Canada says you should eat it. But Health Canada doesn't take into account that you're not a cow.
Good point.
Think about me ingesting 1,500 grams of bud. Imagine trying to chew 900 grams of dried bud a month and what that would do to your digestive system. But to stay legal, that's what I would have to do.
Yeah.
And this is the stupidity of our government and Health Canada. All right? So what we decided to do is we're going to start aligning the patients to act as a common voice. We can't do anything yet because we have to wait until Health Canada actually puts out this new proposal. And they've got to release it in the Gazette. Once it's released in the Gazette, that's when you're going to probably see 20,000 licensed growers that produce their own medicine for themselves or for a loved one are going to court. And instead of one big class action suit, be prepared because I expect to see 20,000 1,000 individual suits, and their new regulations are going to stay in court forever and a day because there are too many patients out there like me. If you're that sick and you're using pounds per month, you're not working. You can't afford to pay $10 a gram. It's impossible. You've got to be able to produce it yourself. This year I grew sativas outdoors. My cost to grow sativas, totally natural, totally organic, no chemicals, 3 cents per gram. Lori McEachran, the director of the MCPAC, just released hers today. She did an entire spreadsheet because I said, you got to do this. We got to start showing the people. She grew all indica. She actually included the cost of her fencing and everything else for her setup, and her cost to produce her medicine was 2.2 cents per gram. She went on to further do the calculation that if she was to purchase it from one of these legal entities, that would be $55,400 for a year's worth of medicine that she grew for 2.2 cents per gram. This is why the patients are going to fight this.